time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible. Entrepreneurial expansion, Cuban economic crisis, and a $500 million tech investment. Hello and welcome to CBX Business News for Tuesday, July 15, 2025. I'm Neil Wood. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast locally, Prime Minister Holness says expanding the entrepreneurial sector is crucial to Jamaica's economic and social progress. On the regional front, Cuba's economic free-fall deepens as growth contracts and foreign currency earnings drop sharply. And over on the global stage, Apple commits $500 million to U.S. rare earth producer MP Materials, signaling strategic moves in the tech supply chain. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after this break.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the CBX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why CBX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
Let's all get fit. This summer set drip. Hip dips and split. For in the mind, let's get healthy with it. Sometimes the body's so hard, but everybody wants it. And then your head is so home, and it's so like this. So we gotta go 1, 2, 3. One more now. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. One more now. 1, 2, 3. One more now. 1, 2, 3, go!
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with key updates from the government on advancing business development and improving access to financing for entrepreneurs.
The Jamaican economy, the Jamaican society cannot grow unless its entrepreneurial class grows.
That was Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness speaking at the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce's MSME Linkages Day held earlier today at the Alfred Sangster Auditorium, University of Technology, UTech. The event was staged under the theme Accelerating MSME Wealth Creation Through Increased Exports, Linkages, Business Development Support, and Access to Financing. Holness further underscored the critical role of human capital in economic growth, stressing that without motivated individuals to mobilize capital, technology, and labor, sustainable development is unattainable.
Unless we have people who are willing to mobilize capital, labor, technology, management, creativity, and put them together in an ecosystem to create value and to make a profit. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is how economies grow.
Dr. Holness also outlined the profile of entrepreneurs the government seeks to cultivate, which includes individuals who are decisive and capable of building sustainable and socially conscious businesses.
But it works even better if we create the kind of entrepreneur who is also empathetic. So they are not just mobilizing capital, labor, technology, human resources, creativity for profit, but they are doing it in a sustainable and socially conscious way. That is the kind of entrepreneur that we want to create. We want to create the entrepreneurs that sees the problems in the society and say, I will find a solution for it. That is the entrepreneur that Minister Hill is trying to create.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. To other news, the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin is reporting today that the All Jamaica Consumer Price Index, CPI, declined by 0.3% in June 2025, dropping from 141.9 to 141.5. The primary driver of this decrease was a 1.5% fall in the housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels division. This was largely due to a reduction in electricity rates following a cut in the General Consumption Tax (GCT) on residential electricity charges. Consequently, the Electricity, Gas, and Other Fuels Group Index fell by 3.5%. Additionally, water supply and related services saw a 1% decline, reflecting lower water and sewage rates. The Food and Non-Alcoholic Beverages Division also contributed to the easing inflation, registering a modest 0.3% decline. Prices fell mainly in the fruits and nuts class by 4.9% and the vegetables, tubers, plantains, cooking bananas, and pulses class by 0.8%, influenced by lower prices for agricultural products such as ripe bananas, pineapples, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, and tomatoes. Offsetting these declines was a 1.4% increase in the furnishings, household equipment, and root household maintenance division. Statin says this rise was largely driven by a 6.7% increase in the national minimum wage effective June 1, 2025, which contributed to a 1.8% increase in the costs of routine household maintenance goods and services. Now, the point-to-point inflation rate for the period June 2024 to June 2025 stood at 3.8%. In other news, Future Energy Source Company Limited (FESCO's) revenue increased to $30,045,980,887 for the financial year ended March 31. This represents an increase of approximately $1.365 billion over the $28,680,616,572 realized in the 2024 period. The company's gross profit was $1,664,529,137 for the corresponding period. However, this amounted to $1,387,005,451. FESCO's net profit for financial year 2025 stood at $461,549,985 when compared to the $410,816,940 earned in the corresponding period of 2024. Meanwhile, earnings per ordinary stock unit attributed to stockholders of the company, or EPS, was 18 cents. For financial year 2024, the EPS was 16 cents. The fuel company says stockholders' equity at the end of March 31, which includes share capital, capital returns, and retained earnings, amounted to $2,719,397,692. In the corresponding period, it amounted to $2,257,847,707. Now to foreign currency trading news. At the end of currency trading on Tuesday, the US dollar is selling for $161.27, the Canadian for $118.09, and the pound for $214.73. The going rate for the euro is $186.62. Up next, trading news from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. 106 stocks traded on the JSE Tuesday, of which 44 advanced, 45 declined, and 17 traded firm. Cargo handlers, Epley Limited, Salada Foods Jamaica, and Tropical Battery led today's winners, while the losers were led by Iron Rock Insurance Company, Main Event Entertainment, Epley 7.75% preference shares, and ISP Finance Services. The main index advanced by 164.30 points, or 0.05%, to close at 305,863.11. The junior market index, however, declined by 1.94, or 0.06%, to close at 3,388.10. In today's market education feature, we'll be defining the term rainmaker. A rainmaker is an individual who plays a pivotal role in an organization's growth by securing high-value clients, generating substantial revenue, or attracting strategic opportunities, often through personal influence and a powerful professional network. Typically occupying senior roles such as partner, principal, or executive, rainmakers are widely respected for their ability to deliver results. Retired politicians with legal backgrounds who transition into prominent law firms often fit this profile. Over time, the term has also evolved to describe top performers in fields like investment banking, political strategy, and public speaking, any sector where influence translates into measurable success. And that's it for Market Education feature and the end of the local segment. Please stay with us. The regional business news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Hi, I'm Nielsen Rose, host of Let's Talk Stocks, reminding you that health is indeed wealth, and time is really money. Why not spend a little time with us? Weekday mornings, 9 to 9:30 a.m. for your daily dose of business, economic, and investment insights.
Welcome back. Now to news from across the region. Cuba's economic meltdown is accelerating, with the government reporting a 1.1% contraction in GDP for 2023, deepening a steep 10% decline since 2019. The collapse comes amid a worsening shortage of foreign exchange, surging imports, and a crippled energy grid that's grinding daily life and production to a halt. Speaking before Parliament's Economic Commission on Monday, Minister of Economy Joaquin Alonso painted a grim picture of prospects for recovery, citing ongoing U.S. sanctions, disrupted global financial flows, and declining hard currency earnings, down 9% when compared to the same period last year. Cuba's foreign currency earnings have plunged 9% so far this year compared to 2023, while imports have jumped 7%. The imbalance is widening an already unsustainable external debt burden, last reported at $19.7 billion in 2020, and putting added pressure on depleted reserves. The economic shock has also devastated key sectors. Agriculture, livestock, and mining have plummeted by over 53% in 5 years. Manufacturing has contracted 23%. Fuel shortages and equipment failures have slashed electricity generation, with widespread blackouts now lasting up to 16 hours daily. Alonso described the past 2 years as being marked by the intensified impact of the blockade, the fierce persecution of financial flows, and barriers to international transactions that have hindered payments to suppliers. Financial institutions in the Bahamas are under increasing pressure to strengthen their digital defenses as cybercriminals deploy more advanced and coordinated attacks against banks and their customers. Speaking during a cybersecurity and digital banking webinar on Monday, Information Security Unit Manager at the Central Bank of the Bahamas, Luther Smith, says ransomware and phishing remain the most common types of cyber attacks targeting the financial sector.
Cyber attacks come in many forms, and of the many, phishing and ransomware are the most common targeting financial institutions. Right. So this is not to suggest that we're not susceptible or can fall victim to the others, but phishing and ransomware, more specifically, are the means by which cyber criminals and threat actors typically target financial institutions.
He also raised concerns about deepfake technology, AI-generated video or audio content designed to mislead bank employees or customers by imitating executives, officials, or known entities in order to facilitate fraud.
Not as common as those previously mentioned, but AI deepfakes are also becoming increasingly popular. And I thought it important to mention it. By no means is it, either number one or number two in terms of the targeted approaches. But we should anticipate that its use will grow.
Information Security Unit Manager at the Central Bank of the Bahamas, Luther Smith. In all the news, Trinidad and Tobago's health and business authorities have agreed to a 30-day collaborative plan to address concerns surrounding the distribution of specialty drugs directly to patients. The temporary resolution follows a high-level meeting convened by the Health Minister Dr. Lakram Bodo on July 10 after pharmaceutical wholesalers and distributors received cease and desist letters that triggered alarm among patients dependent on medications for cancer, gastrointestinal, and other complex conditions. President of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Sonji Pierre Chase, outlined key resolutions agreed at the meeting.
We agreed that a resolution utilizing a collaborative approach over the next 30 days to regularize distribution practices without disrupting patient care is most critical. As a first step, the Pharmacy Board has committed to conducting a national assessment to evaluate the state of readiness of pharmacies to distribute these specialty medications directly to patients.
She noted that pharmaceutical distributors will submit reports to the Pharmacy Board detailing the obstacles they face in supplying these medications to retail outlets.
Distributors in turn will assess and report to the Pharmacy Board the specific challenges regarding the distribution of these specialty medications to the pharmacies. Our resolution will be actively pursued with a concerted effort on both the distributors, pharmacies, and all stakeholders.
President of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Sonji Pierre Chase. And still with Trinidad and Tobago, but this time trading news from the TTSE. 18 securities traded on the TTSE Tuesday, of which 7 advanced, 5 declined, and 6 traded firm. Leading the winners were Angostura Holdings, JMB Group, Unilever Caribbean, and Massey Holdings, while leading the losers were the West Indian Tobacco Company, Ansa McCall, Grace Kennedy, and Prestige Holdings. Other results include the All TNT Index declining by 4.11 to close at 1,486.16. The Composite Index declining by 3.07 to close at 1,016.88. The Cross-Listed Index also declined but by 0.27 to close at 72.07. And still at 91.40 is the SME Index. And we go for a quick break, but please stay with us. Rondine Williams is up next with the International Business News segment.
Welcome back. In international news, China's economy expanded by 5.2% year-on-year in the second quarter of 2025, easing from a 5.4% growth in the previous 2 quarters and marking the slowest pace since quarter 3, 2024. Despite the deceleration, the figure slightly surpassed market expectations of 5.1%, buoyed by Beijing's supportive policy measures amid a fragile trade truce. In June, industrial production unexpectedly picked up to a 3-month high, and the unemployment rate held steady at a 6-month low. However, retail sales growth slowed to a 4-month low, even with government subsidies on electronics. On the trade front, exports surged as manufacturers rushed to fulfill orders ahead of looming tariffs, while imports posted their first increase of the year. For the first half of 2025, the economy grew 5.3%. Meanwhile, across the United Kingdom, strong consumer spending is painting a more optimistic retail picture. UK retail sales rose by 2.7% year-on-year on a like-for-like basis in June 2025, marking a sharp rebound from May's modest 0.6% increase and far exceeding market expectations of just 0.2%. The boost was driven by warmer weather and major seasonal events like Wimbledon, which increased foot traffic and demand for items such as fans and sportswear. Food sales jumped 4.1%, largely driven by ongoing price inflation, while non-food sales climbed 2.2% as consumers took advantage of summer promotions. And as consumer activity picked up in key markets, companies are also rethinking their supply chains, especially in the tech sector. Apple has announced a landmark $500 million investment in MP Materials, the only fully integrated rare earth mining and processing company in the United States. The multi-year deal marks a significant step in Apple's strategy to secure a domestic supply of rare earth elements critical to the production of iPhones, iPads, Macs, and other devices. The investment will support the expansion of MP Materials' operation at its flagship Independence facility in Fort Worth, Texas, where the company will build advanced manufacturing lines for key components for many Apple products. In addition, Apple and MP Materials will jointly develop a state-of-the-art recycling facility in Mountain Pass, California, reprocess rare earth materials from used electronics and industrial scrap. The deal is also being hailed as a strategic win for the U.S. government, which has prioritized reducing reliance on foreign resources, particularly China, for critical minerals. Currently, China dominates the global rare earth market, producing about 60% of the world's supply and processing up to 90%. And while strategic investments grow, inflation pressures continue to shape the monetary outlook in the United States. The annual inflation rate in the U.S. rose to 2.7% in June 2025, up from 2.4% in May, marking the highest level since February and matching market expectations. On a monthly basis, consumer prices increased 0.3%, the largest gain in 5 months following a 0.1% rise in May. The main contributors to the uptick were shelter costs, which rose 0.2%, and gasoline prices, which climbed 1%. Core inflation, which excluded food and energy, edged up to 2.9%, after holding steady at 2.8% for 3 months. While this was the highest core rate since early 2025, it remained below the forecasted 3%. Monthly core CPI rose by 0.2%, slightly under expectations of 0.3%, but above May's 0.1% increase, suggesting underlying price pressures remaining moderate. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast, but please do stay with us. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break. Welcome back, and now to recap our top stories. Jamaica's government says expanding entrepreneurial sector key to economic and social growth. Regionally, Cuba's economic freefall deepens as growth contracts and foreign currency earnings fall. And on the international scene, Apple commits $500 million to U.S. rare earth producer
MP materials. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Rondine Williams and the entire production team, I'm Yonil Wood, thanking you for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
This is Peter Douglas, General Manager, Woodcats International. You're watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
You're watching CBX Caribbean Business Exchange, your region.